So good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to what is our final episode in a series of 5 on leadership in the new era. So I'm Paul Northey. I have 30 years of R&D business experience, and Peter Coxon is a business executive coach and a psychologist. So today our final topic is developing a rich and fertile culture. So this is ultimately something a leader should be doing at all levels. And maybe, Peter, you could maybe give us your thoughts on what is a rich and fertile culture and how to develop it and why it's important.
Yeah, thanks, Paul. Culture is one of those kind of amorphous things. It's hard to get hold of. It's like fog. You can kind of feel it, but sense it, but you can't grab hold of it. My favorite definition, I think, was something about it's how things get done around here. It's just kind of how it works.
Yeah.
And there are different kind of cultures that we meet, of course. The danger for many organizations where some at least are having to work from home, and indeed increasingly perhaps wanting to at times, that Zoom life and remote working can become somewhat sterile. I think many people are beginning to recognize the pros and cons of working from home and working at work. And there may well be that hybrid, that flexible, different way that's emerging. So whatever setup you have, you may need to compensate for what is lacking. What are you doing to maintain a healthy workplace culture? Well, what did you do? What did others like about the culture that you've had prior to March 2020? What was it about the place that people liked? Oh, and by the way, what was it about the place that they didn't like? How would you have liked?
I'm interested in your first statement there, earlier statements, because it's like a fog, right? But you know when you're in a bad culture, and you know when you're in a great one. But getting from a bad one to a great one is sometimes quite a challenging task to undertake, and it's a real challenge to make that journey as a leader.
Yes, it is, and there's a theme that will emerge here. But supposing you did have a pretty good culture, so how did it help? What was good about it? And if you created that organization there, that culture where people wanted to stay, they loved working here. Yeah. They were great advocates for the organization. How can you maintain that sense during these different times? How can you? One of the key flavors of that, which has been emerging in the research recently, is how can you build a sense of psychological safety that promotes both business health and individual mental health. So during times of uncertainty that we've been going through, you'll want people, of course, to feel physically safe at work, including whether they're working at home. There have been some good things that HR have been doing, looking at that to make sure that you've got physically safe environments to work in. There's been good work done in a number of organizations about recognizing that your physical safety is at greatest risk when you're driving to work. So I had an organization, they trained everyone up in defensive driving. They worked really well on the health and safety side of life. And increasingly now, there's literature that's building up about this sense of psychological safety. Google carried out some extensive research quite recently into what differentiates high-performing teams from all the other teams. Yeah. And they had all kinds of hypotheses as to what it might be that made a team a high-performing team. And what they concluded, what they were almost forced to conclude against their expectations, was that this one factor was having the greatest impact, that a team felt psychologically safe. They were then able to perform in a sustainable, high-performing manner. And that's really quite interesting. So I've carried out my own research on this topic over the last few years.
Okay.
And I'd like to just run through, if I may, a quick summary of how you can go about creating a psychologically safe culture. We've touched on the emotions a little bit already, and I'll say more about that. We do need to manage our own emotions. Having emotions is a good thing, acknowledging them is a good thing, and managing them is a good thing as well. It's not this better out than in, and don't give yourself permission, if you're a boss, to have a little tantrum here and there. It's not actually helpful by and large. You know, I don't believe in the Alex Ferguson hairdryer approach at all. So manage your emotions. By all means, say if you're very upset, if you're angry even, but find ways of expressing it with an I statement.
I was given an analogy for this several years ago in a course which was related to traffic lights, right? You can outwardly look green as a traffic light, but internally you've gone through amber and you're hitting red. Yeah. What does the audience see? A green to red transition. Yeah, which takes them by surprise. But you've somehow rationalized this because you internalized your amber light, and I think your words reminded me of that. It's important to acknowledge your green light, acknowledge your amber light, and communicate your amber light, that you have a certain disquiet or a certain dislike or a certain issue with what's happening or what statements have been provided, etc. And then you ask them. Then you know the red light is a rarity, and it can be employed as in a variety of guises. But ultimately, it's really important to communicate the amber light so that you take people through your inner feelings.
I think so. This is a part of what we'd always say is we want to be, everyone says we want to be open and honest. Be open and honest, but don't give yourself permission with that phrase of saying, oh, I told him how it was, I told him straight. Don't allow yourself what's called the amygdala hijack, where suddenly you see red and it blasts people. But I'm not advocating, although there's a place for a kind of a more stoic philosophy in life, but I think you and I are both saying, find the right time and the right place to choose, is it right to express an emotion here? And if so, how do I express it in a way that allows you to hear it and gain the feedback? So when you do this,
I tell you where I see this the most often is with parents and children. So this is a class. You can practice a lot of techniques as a parent or with other people's children, but you often see a parent that will flip, go from green to red instantly, and the child is confused. They actually don't understand what is happening. They just see a madman or a mad woman in front of them screaming and shouting. The amber light has been internalized. They don't understand what's happening. And that's why it's important to at least then give a child or maybe a colleague a chance to actually understand the emotional processes that you're going through.
Well, in a former life, I worked with children, with teenagers, with parents, and with teachers. And actually, when I started working with adults in the professional guises, I found that we're all just the same by and large.
Yes.
So yes, be open and honest, but manage your emotions. Don't let your emotions manage you.
Yeah.
On the flip side, we've also already touched on this whole idea of the active listening, showing empathy, showing sensitivity. We don't have to go heavily into being sympathetic, but be empathetic. We're not counselors. We're not psychiatrists. We're not there to solve other people's problems or to spend hours with them working through some existential crisis they're having. There are other people that you can point them to in that way. And I would at times say, look, this isn't my area of expertise, but I do recommend, if problems at home are so adversely affecting you, that you're struggling to function at work, then do find someone who might be able to help you. Don't just carry on again in victim mode. So a little bit of tough love in a sense, if you like. So we've already also touched last time on this idea of forging real personal conversations. So you're really genuinely getting to know people. For a culture to be psychologically safe, everyone should feel comfortable contributing in meetings, and also be willing to genuinely explore the ideas that other people have, rather than, that phrase, are you listening or are you just waiting to interrupt? Genuinely explore other people's ideas, as well as come forward with your own enthusiastic ideas. You do need to create a sense of dependability, that you can depend on me. If I say I'll do something, I'll do it. You do need to create this sense of interpersonal trust, that when you say that you'll do it, I trust that you will do it as well. We want to be mutually respectful, despite the divergence. I know you feel strongly about wanting to develop divergence in your culture. And we need to not just respect the people who are like us, but accept and respect everyone for what they can contribute.
I spent some time studying the value of diversity in its entirety and many forms, and its impact on team performance. And there's a very clear correlation between diverse teams working together and performance. And the data I saw and the mechanisms that were employed to measure performance suggested that there could be a 20 or 30% improvement in the performance of an organization if the culture is diverse. And I was a very strong exponent of this, and continue to drive this today in terms of my kind of technical recruitment activities. I look for diverse talent, and not let's say building a team that reflects you. Performance comes from different opinions, and the collection of different opinions, different ways of thinking. Some people think very quickly, some people take time to process data. All are valid. And ultimately, I've learned myself that sometimes you're not right, and the tortoise sometimes beats the hare, right? So, and I think you have to accept this diversity as part of a better decision making and a better culture.
It's interesting. We talk about the 1.3. If your organization relied solely on your 1.3 kilograms, then frankly, you're doomed.
I took that to heart there, Peter. But
yes, that's right. But we do need to draw on the intelligence of all the people around us. There's a danger that we can also be tribal. One of the elements of being human is to be tribal and to like people like us. And we can be prejudiced against people who aren't like us. So we have to again manage those quite primitive emotions and reach out to be curious. As Albert Einstein once said, I'm not that bright, I'm not that clever, I'm just very, very curious. Curious in other people's viewpoints, other people's perspectives. Give them time and space to express themselves. That plays into the next point, which is because we need people to be comfortable being themselves and willing to not only express themselves, but also to disclose their own personal vulnerabilities, their own concerns, their own worries about how things are, how they're doing, if they're struggling with a piece of work or something. We want them to say so. We don't want them to pretend it's all okay. And I've had, in some cultures, I've had lots of people, they go, yes, there's a kind of yes.
There are definitely cultures that I've worked with where bad news, failure, is not accepted as something that should ever be communicated, and and once you're aware of this, you have to really focus on that aspect and really try to make sure that an acceptance of something or a response to a question really is the reality rather than a cultural norm. Yeah.
Absolutely. I've worked with a number of global organizations who've gone through a nationalization program, and some of the tribes, notably quite often the expats, have found it difficult to tune in, help the other people, the nationals, feel comfortable enough to express themselves, to say when they're not confident of doing something, etc. We've touched on the next theme a little bit, but I'll repeat it because it's worth stressing, I think. Effective, balanced, constructive feedback. Be straight, be honest, do it regularly, choose your words carefully, get the right process for doing it. And almost there, create a safe space so that people can take risks while still maintaining their positive self-image. You touched on failure. You know, people talk about it much more nowadays, that it's good to fail because you're one step nearer to success and everything.
Yeah.
It's okay to take risks and it's okay to fail so long as it doesn't knock your confidence.
Yeah. And I think the other essential part of failure is reflection and learn. Yeah. And I saw Elon Musk's SpaceX rocket crash and burn yesterday or the day before. This was his first attempt. To a lot of people, they laugh at the failure and say, he can't achieve this. But I guarantee you, that organization, as a fail, learn, re-execute organization, will come back and they will solve the problem. It's important to make sure that you have all the data from the failure and to really deeply understand it before you move to the next stage and ultimately reassess and go again. Yeah,
I think that's right, and I think I would add one more component to that, which is create space so that people can take a risk in their interpersonal relationships as well. If there's something that's bothering you about the way you're working with someone or the way they're supporting you or not supporting you, overly challenging you, dismissing you or whatever, can you take a risk of raising this with them and knowing that actually if it doesn't work out, it's okay, because you can always have another go. It's always tomorrow, as you said. But it's not going to crush me if this doesn't work out. I know myself. I'm just trying to get this right. I've said to people before, I have on my gravestone, I was only trying to help. So maintain your positive self-image of only trying to help.
Yeah, and I think that's a fantastic statement to end today's session, and sadly to end the 5 episodes series of leadership in this challenging era. So thank you, Peter. Thank you for all the listeners and viewers, and hopefully we'll come up with some other ideas in the future, and you can listen to me and Peter give our views and opinions as we move forward. But